other person could have, let's say, a red mark or a scratch. Good afternoon, everybody. This is David Kohlmeyer. I am the Problem Solver. Welcome to the Problem Solver Show. I am happy to be here today, spending some time. I have a lovely guest that's going to be on the show right now. Every single week, we bring on other problem solvers that help people in the community in different ways. We also have a progressive web app, which is theproblemsolver.vegas, which basically has a lot of resources. You can click on the app and add it to your home screen, and there's different resources for jobs, employment, for housing, all kinds of different nonprofits that are involved in the Problem Solver in order to basically help people in Las Vegas and Clark County. Again, I'm David Kohlmeyer, the Problem Solver, a retired police officer of 17 years. I've worked in Henderson Police and New York City Police as well, and I'm basically paying it forward by solving people's problems and helping people every single week. Today, I'm fortunate to have a lovely guest to my left. I have Rick McCann, who is the Executive Director for NAPSO, which stands for Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers. Rick, thanks for joining the show today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
So I appreciate you being here. I've known you for quite a long time. You know me way too long.
Way too long. Yeah, we go back probably around 20 years or so.
Well, so I'm actually in town about 19 years. So I was actually
all right. Then I cheated.
Yeah. You got a little extra hair from me, the gray hair. So I think I actually was thinking about the other day. I think that we know each other for probably about 17 or 18 years when I first got started with the Henderson Police. And I know that you basically have done a lot in the community and you're helping police officers plus regular people as well. And I wanted to have you on the show. I know that you have some changes going on with you as well, and I wanted to bring you on the show to talk about it. But just tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from originally. Give us a little intro about yourself, about Rick.
Well, I was born and raised in the southeastern Pennsylvania area near Philadelphia. At 17, I went to the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, did my undergrad there, graduated from there with my degree, and then went to law school. Law school in San Diego, California at Western State University College of Law, and then came here to Las Vegas in 1980. So I'm kind of a native, certainly compared to a lot of people in our community. So for almost 41 years I've been here. And I was with some preeminent law firms here doing litigation, personal injury and insurance defense and business litigation and things like that. And then I had a couple of people at Metro Police Department, who came to my office for completely unrelated matters, and they had some issues involving some disciplinary matters they had with Metro. We got talking. Long story short, I took up their cases and we had some success. And then all of a sudden, I took up the case of a relatively well-celebrated case at that time of a gentleman in Henderson with the Henderson Police Department. And a lot of litigation there. Took the case all the way to State Supreme Court. Myself and the people I was working with, wasn't simply just me. And that just started a process whereby cops kept coming. And you know better than anyone, David, cops don't trust people very easily. When they do, they trust them implicitly. Mm-hmm. I was fortunate enough to be honored by them to develop more trust with them, represent more clients, members for them. And then it just developed into NAPSO. And about 12 or so years ago, we opened up the Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers. And we represent our officers, about 1,500 of them around the state, in about maybe 18 or 19 different associations, law enforcement unions, if you will. And we represent them for such things as disciplinary matters, internal affairs investigations, arbitrations that we may need to. Sometimes we have court situations we deal with, grievances if they have issues about their pay or something of that nature. We also represent them on their collective bargaining. They have collective bargaining agreements, and we represent them in attempting to get them better wages, better benefits, better working conditions. And then, of course, in the last 5 or 6 years, we've really made a splash in the legislative arena, where we represent them. I'm a full-time lobbyist for our group as well up in Carson City. We deal with our federal delegation back in Washington, D.C. on police-related matters. And so we've developed into quite a little factory of doing things just for law enforcement. And I'm very proud of the fact that we've been able to put this organization together. And as you said, you wanted to talk about it, but I'll jump right into it by saying at the end of this year, I'm going to be semi-retiring. I've been doing this for 40 years, litigation, the last 20 or so with law enforcement, and we're going to find some other people to take over the NAPSO, our group, and run it, hopefully a whole lot better than I ever have. And we're going to improve it and make it better, and I want some other people to take that over. Matter of fact, I've already hired my successor. So we're moving forward. We're not moving backwards.
I think it's hard to put someone in your shoes in general because you've been doing it for so long, and it's such a rare niche kind of that you're doing, like labor representation and legal representation and helping officers in many different ways that you have. Just to recap again, because some listeners will be police and some will be just regular people in general. They don't really understand it, but I guess what it comes down to is that police officers have certain benefits and rights, and basically they're a little bit different than the average person. And then NAPSO basically is the organization that's basically helping police officers for representation in many different ways, whether it's collective bargaining, which means like their contract, their agreement, their benefits, they pay their salary, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. So basically you're representing the officers, and technically the police officers represent the people in the community where they're helping society and the people in the community. And so it's nice that there is an organization that's helping officers. Now, NAPSO is specifically, you mentioned 19 associations, but Las Vegas Metro, which is kind of the larger group, that's not affiliated with NAPSO, correct?
Yeah, the association, they do a great job at Metro PPA, representing their members. I think Metro is about the 7th or so largest law enforcement group in the country, law enforcement agency, and thus the PPA, Police Protective Association, is very big as well. They do a fine job in representing their people. We do not represent the association. We do represent and have in the past represented many of the officers and supervisors who may come to us for specific needs they may have. So we have a good affiliation with Metro officers. We work well with the Internal Affairs Bureau over there, and we've dealt with a lot of them, their people, but we don't represent the association. They do a fine job doing it by themselves.
So for the entire state, basically, you're representing all the other officers, pretty much, of the 19 associations, just not with Metro, because Metro is kind of the bigger dog, and basically they have a larger
they've got their own thing. They do their own thing. They've been doing it for a long, long time. And we don't represent every officer in Nevada. Of course, there's many more than 1,500. There's other associations out there we do not represent. Okay. But when they come calling, we don't go doing a lot of door-to-door knocking and solicitations. But when they come calling and saying, NAPSO, we want them on our side, we more often than not will take them on and put them under our umbrella. I call NAPSO an umbrella organization, basically as an umbrella over those other groups. The other associations, whether it be Henderson or the Nevada Highway Patrol people and whatnot, parole and probation, doesn't matter. Their organizations are their own set associations. And quite candidly, they pay us dues each month to basically give them the services that I just outlined.
Out of the 19, just if you want to, I don't know if you know all 19, to go over some of the associations that you represent.
Well, they're on our website, which is napso.net, www.napso.net. And
just to name a few.
Some of them would be the Henderson Police Officers Association and the Henderson Police Supervisors Association. We also represent the Clark County Park Police Association. We represent a bunch of state people called the Nevada State Law Enforcement Officers Association, and they would be comprised of all state-oriented, state-employed law enforcement personnel. We represent people with the Pershing County Sheriff's Office. We represent people in the Lovelock PD. There's only 3 of them, but we represent their association. We represent people in the Winnemucca PD. We represent people in the Elko PD, Elko Sheriff's Office, Mineral County, which is in Hawthorne, Nevada. We represent people in the White Pine County group. A lot of them. I'm missing some of them, but again, I'm going to do a selfless
plug.
All
of the state. I feel like you need a helicopter, like a NAPSO helicopter. You fly, you just land.
We should. I spend a lot of time in my car. I spend a lot of time driving. I spend a lot of time on Southwest Airlines. Thank you, Southwest. And driving all over to portions of it. We call it the I-80 corridor, which is Elko and Winnemucca and Pershing County and Lovelock. So when we do things, we try to do them at the same time. I'm going to negotiate your contract on Monday. I'm going to then drive to air and do your contract on Tuesday, and then we'll take care of the internal affairs thing up there on Wednesday or Thursday. We try to be somewhat good with our time, but we do it.
I just picture you just driving on a highway, going to different spots and stopping off at the gas station.
I know the gas stations. I know the coyotes. They know me on a first name basis. Yeah.
So I was just thinking that you're just driving all over the state, helping different organizations that represent police, and in the middle of nowhere, like you got this guy Rick McCann driving around, basically trying to help police officers. And I commend you for all the work that you've done representing police officers. I've known you for quite some time, and I commend you for all your work. I think sometimes they say police officers are a thankless job in general, that no one's really thanking you per se. I think actually you representing police officers is a very difficult job, and it's not easy always representing people during distressed times or contract negotiations gets very, people get, when it comes down to money, right? And benefits, I mean, people feel that they put their lives, on the line and they deserve these certain benefits. And sad to say, knock on wood, but police officers, they die every single day for basically, serving the United States of America. And, sometimes people get upset that police officers are making, decent money in general, which is not always true in other states.
Not always true.
Fortunately, out here in the West, in Las Vegas, it happened to be, more of a higher paying position as a police officer. But some police officers are making, throughout the United States, are making $15 an hour.
We got people here in Nevada, especially up in the upper portion of the state, who are not making that kind of money. They call it metro money, just to be a smart guy. Metro's not making as much as they want to, and they're not getting paid as much as they should get paid. But everybody looks at Metro just because we all know who Metro is. And no, there's a lot of people out there that are doing the same selfless acts and commitment
for a lot less money.
For a lot less money, and they're in communities that they're more interested in helping the community. I got people in some of the areas who you look at them and say, why wouldn't you just move down to Vegas, where you have access to the Hendersons and the North Las Vegas is, by the way, we also represent their supervisors, and Metro. Why wouldn't you come down here and try to take a job down there? And many of them will say, listen, I was born and raised in this community. This is my community. The people who taught my parents are the people in the school that taught me. And I want to make a difference. And, when I talk to young people who have that attitude, it reconfirms for me that is a commitment. It is a calling. You know that. You were called to service at some point in time in your life, and you did it for whatever your reasons were. But I'm sure it's because you wanted to make a difference.
Absolutely. I mean, helping people, most officers, I would say, 98%, basically taking the job because they want to help people and pay it forward and do good work and, help society, but it also is nice to be paid and compensated, decently so you can live, with your family in general. So that's why I think it's always been important for representation for police officers because, if you're going to be a police officer, you want to have that benefit. You want to have that right, especially, God forbid, something you passed away one day from a shooting or something that happened. You want to make sure that your family's taken care of. And someone has to be fighting for cops. And like I said, NAPSO, I think, has been doing that for quite some time. So how many years now NAPSO has been around?
We launched NAPSO. We were another organization called the California Organization of Police and Sheriffs. And we essentially took ourselves away from them and actually launched on September 1st, 2009. So we're coming up upon our 12th anniversary. We have a birthday coming up on September 1st.
It's amazing. I know we have a video that showcases NAPSO that I think it just forms everything together about NAPSO. If we could play that quick video just so that our viewers and listeners can hear and see it, that'd be great.
The Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers, NAPSO, was created in September 2009. We advocate for our members across the state of Nevada who are peace officers, and we represent such entities as Nevada Highway Patrol, city police officers, county sheriffs, deputies, parole and probation, university police. As a matter of fact, we number dozens of organizations and agencies around the state, and we have members who live, who work in all 17 counties of this state. I think one of the great assets that we provide to our membership is not only the representational matter, which is a large part of what we do, collective bargaining for those groups that have collective bargaining for their wages, their benefits, and their working conditions. We also act as an advocate for them in Carson City and across the state because we are also professional lobbyists. I am a lobbyist to secure benefits, to secure statutory rights for our members that goes beyond just the day-to-day workings under today's law. We're trying to better the law for them, provide them with additional Peace Officer Bill of Rights, add to those rights. There's a lot of people who want to take away their PERS, their retirement benefits. We need to be fighting to keep those retirement benefits, keep collective bargaining, so that our collective bargaining groups have the opportunity of advancing their careers, advancing their payroll, taking care of their families like everybody else in this community wants. One of our mottos is that we are here to protect those who protect and serve. It is one of the most grueling, one of the most thankless jobs to be a police officer. They put their lives on the line every day. They leave their families to come protect my family and your family. They go out there, they do the things and they see things that are unspeakable. They deal with people in the corrections environment, on the streets, in the various parts of this state that I would not be able to do. They have courage And they truly are heroes of mine and heroes of the people who work in our office. Our police officers here in Nevada have the awesome responsibility of protecting those of us in this community. We at NAPSO have the awesome responsibility of protecting those officers.
So I think that basically explains it to the T. It's a great video. So I wanted to ask you, what is your, you have a new person that's going to be taking over in general, but I know that your whole week can be busy in general, and you kind of explained a little bit. What's the daily life of Rick McCann in regards to if it's a Monday, you come into the office? I know you got a really busy schedule, not to scare the new guy that's basically taking over, but if you just wanted to quickly just talk about like what, you're preparing for a week, like what your Monday's like and then what your week looks like in regards to jumping all around.
I would love, David, to be able to prepare for my day or my week. Those days are behind us. My day changes rapidly, and so will my successor, and he's aware of it. He started in his training with us here 3 weeks ago, so he's already aware of how maddening it can be. Not always. But my phone is the bane of my existence, but it's also, like many of us in any business we're involved with, it keeps me connected, and it goes off 24/7. One of the things that I have to come in the office in the morning, if I am able to get right to the office, there may be a lot of internal affairs stuff I have to review go to internal affairs interviews. Then there's phone calls and emails and texts beyond comprehension. Everybody wants a piece of your time. And well, that's what they pay their dues for NAPSO. So maybe I'm just stupid, but I've always felt that if you're going to pay for something, you should get something. And we think we do a very good job at servicing our members, so we respond. One of the things that can happen at any given point in time, and you know this, are what we call OISs, or officer-involved shootings. Critical incidents, another term for them. And that can happen at any time. I'm running about 110 officer-involved shootings that I've been involved with throughout my career in doing this with these officers all around the state. Now, there's other ones that I've not been able to be involved with because maybe I'm in the Carson City legislature in Carson City and something happens in Las Vegas. Well, the good part about our organization is we also pay about 4 different law firms around the state. We have them on retainer. And those law firms will provide whenever I can't. I can't be in 5 places at one time, so they, with their law firm experiences, we've trained with them. They're very good. They're very, very competent. We have civil and administrative law firms. We have criminal law firms. We have 2 of them down here in Vegas, simply because of the population and the number of groups we represent down here. But we also have another law firm up in the Elko region that just is phenomenal. And we have another lawyer with her firm up in the Reno-Carson area. So these are all people who at any given point in time have responded in 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, rain or shine, to take care of the needs of our officers. And we select them with that idea in mind. It's not like we pay them a lot. We're a nonprofit organization. We're bringing in just that amount of money to pay the bills and to keep everything afloat and take care of us, because we put everything else into our members' needs. And one of those needs is to have adequate representation anywhere in the state that may call upon us, even if I cannot be there. And they do a fantastic job. So the partnership that we have with those law firms cannot be underestimated.
So you're working with other law firms to basically help because you can't be at this multiple places within the state. So you have other lawyers that basically will represent NAPSO for whether it's a shooting or internal affairs or collective bargaining, right?
Correct. And to add to, not just if I'm not there, but what if I have a conflict? What if you and another officer are involved in some form of incident in which your story is a little different than that other officer's story as to what you recall versus what they recall? I may not be in a position to represent both of you. So I'll represent the first person to get a hold of me. And if the next person comes and we find out that I could have a conflict in representing both, we'll get one of the other counsel to represent them as well. We have other courtroom matters and whatnot that they handle very expertly. So they're in a lot of stuff with us, some more than others. Do we have a situation in Elko every day? No. Do we have a situation in Reno-Carson every day? No. But do we have people in Las Vegas that need our representation every day, every minute, every hour? Yes.
What are you doing more? Is it more the collective bargaining, or is it more of the representation of officers' rights, or like the internal affairs, or?
Well, I think percentage-wise, the internal affairs and what I'll call the disciplinary matters take up more time. But at any given point in time, when you're in contract negotiations, that could be hours upon hours during the course of a day, times many days, over many weeks, sometimes months. We've gone to 15, 18, 20 sessions trying to get something bargained through, and sometimes it doesn't work, and you go to impasse, and you may have to go to arbitration, and there you go. People just don't always agree. So, if I'm in contract negotiations, I was the lead negotiator on the very first contract that state law enforcement ever got in the history of the state. Why? Because the state employees, not just cop, but state employees in general, they were never allowed to collectively bargain by statute up until the 2019 legislative session. We were instrumental in getting the governor to sign a bill that gave them that collective bargaining right. So what do? We happened to be the first one to start and the first one to end with a contract for what we call Category 2 state peace officers. And it was ratified by our members. It was approved by the Board of Governors. And we got them a raise. We got them all kinds of things they've never had before. That took a lot of time. There was about 10 sessions that we went through, and each one of them was probably 6 to 8 hours each. Now, in those days, I'm not doing a whole lot of other stuff. But mostly it's the defense stuff of our other stuff in terms of the disciplinary stuff. And then, of course, if the session is in session every odd-numbered year, 2017, 2019, this year in 2021, I live in a hotel up in Carson City for those 4 months, those 120 days, coming home hopefully on the weekends for the most part. And that's where my function is. There's a time when if I need something down here in the South, that's when our lawyers are there to pick it up for us.
So 120 days every other year.
Every other year. And it's not to say that that's the only time. There's other interim committees, sessions, finance committees and whatnot. The state is run very well. I mean, I have to give the legislators a lot of credit. Hopefully they watch this a little bit, get some kudos out of it. But I got to give them a lot of credit. They work a lot harder than people think they work, and they don't get paid crap. We have people who truly do have commitments to their constituents. Even if I don't agree with their philosophies, I got to give them credit. They work hard. So for the 120 days that they're in session, yes, I'm up there with them. This year was an anomaly because we had COVID. They closed down the legislative buildings. Excuse me. And excuse me. And as a result of that, I had to start coughing right here in the middle of it. As a result of that, we couldn't get into the building. We did everything by Zoom. We now know how to spell Zoom. Nobody knew how to spell Zoom before COVID. But we all do that. We did it through the remote ways of getting things done. I'll be darned if we didn't get it done. And we passed some very good bills and took care of law enforcement. And it was a police reform movement. A lot of bills came out that were trying to change the overall process of how law enforcement is seen and done. And we agreed to some of it. We do. I mean, we're not going to sit here and say not only no, but hell no when a bill comes across our desk. Maybe it's time for some change, and we are usually there to try to help.
There's a lot of things that are going on this year with police in general and defunding the police and different philosophies. And it's kind of it's been a crazy year with COVID and the policing and everything like that in general, and some of the incidences that happen across the United States with policing and some deaths that have taken place. And I guess they wanted to change a lot of the different laws in general. Can you explain like one specific like one or two of the laws that they wanted to get passed and that they did get passed or did not?
Well, sure. The Attorney General, Aaron Ford, brought a couple of bills. One was to outlaw no-knock warrants. Well, we didn't outlaw them because there sometimes may be a need, but we've placed great restrictions on how they can be issued, how they can be enforced. What judges need to be looking at when they're issuing warrants, because that's who issues warrants, or search warrants and whatnot, are the judges. The Breonna Taylor case was a perfect example of why a lot of states, including Nevada, felt that we needed to make some changes. We were not opposed to making some changes. We just wanted them not to be radical and not to essentially take the tools out of the hands of our officers, and to keep our officers safe as well. We're not going to give that up ever. But we also had one of Aaron Ford's bills was to create what you know of as a peace officer as an early warning system. Some officers may have situations, may have disciplines in their file. They may have certain activities, behavior that give you an early indication that maybe something's not right. And they should be looked at. They should be given some counsel, perhaps. Maybe they need a different supervisor. There's things in life that just aren't always perfect. And you as a peace officer being stuck with this supervisor on this particular shift when you've got things at home going on, maybe we need to be cognizant of that because guess what? You're a human being as well. So if we see some things happening, maybe it's time to address them. Just don't fire them. maybe they need just some help. So that's an early warning system. There were other bills that came out that we were supportive of that talk more, because I think we need more talk about mental health for law enforcement. Mental health is an issue that law enforcement has shied away from because it's not manly, it's not macho, and it puts you in a position where it feels like you're vulnerable. Well, get used to it, officers. There are some mental health situations we need to deal with. So when it's all said and done, that was part of it. We also had other bills that attempted to remove what we call qualified immunity. And qualified immunity is something we're not going to allow them to take from us. But as a result, we worked very well with the legislators who wanted to maybe either remove it or drastically change it to get a bill that worked well. They didn't touch qualified immunity, as it turned out, and that's fine. Well, we gave up some things in order to make sure they didn't touch qualified immunity, which is important to us. Some of the things we gave up was maybe a little bit tighter indication on de-escalation tactics. Peace officer runs into a situation where use of force is perhaps necessary. Do as much as you can, and you as an officer know you would always do that anyway. But let's codify the fact that an officer needs to de-escalate, at least take those steps necessary when feasible, when safe, to try to de-escalate a situation. Everybody thinks that as soon as an officer shows up to some incident, the first thing he does is reach for his gun and start shooting, and that's clearly not the case. De-escalation happens all the time. But it's not in a lot of policies. Maybe we need to put it in policies. It's not a lot of training about it for some of the groups. Most groups are, but not all. And we have to recognize that we don't just represent people from Metro or North Las Vegas or Henderson or Reno PD. They're the big boys. We got these outlying agencies that don't have the money sometimes to do the kind of training that should be done. So we're trying to make sure that our state as a whole doesn't become Minnesota, Minneapolis, doesn't become Atlanta, that we don't have a Breonna Taylor situation, that we don't have a Derek Chauvin situation.
So there's a lot of things that basically have taken place, throughout the U.S. And you mentioned the qualified
immunity.
Yes. And I know in New York City, I think that just got taken away.
Mm-hmm.
It's all these things are so debatable. And me being a retired police officer and serving for 17 years, I know that was a big deal. Like, you felt more protected by having this, protection that you basically couldn't, if you did something wrong, right, there was a different situation. But I mean, there's a lot of things that are changing, and I understand it's much more difficult. I think that with Las Vegas Metro, someone was telling me that the recruitment rate's like down 58% or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of articles being written in the RJ and elsewhere, and I don't doubt them, that trying to recruit law enforcement now with the idea that they're reading in the newspapers, prospective applicants, and they're hearing from everybody, from their bartender to their barber, about how being a cop is now going to make you a criminal. And one of the phrases I like to use is, during the legislative session, don't make cops into criminals overnight. In other words, if you want to change Cole Meyer's way of handling a certain situation that he's always been trained to do and does it well, don't change the law over the weekend. Then he comes to work Monday morning and suddenly he's a criminal for doing the same thing he used to do. But if you want to massage the process to provide training, to change the paradigm of maybe how things are done for this particular department and by this officer or these officers, then we don't have a problem with that. I mean, let's talk about how to get it done and how to keep it done. Beating up on every cop that makes a mistake is not the answer. But let me go on record as saying there are some cops who do some things that need to be taken care of. Some cops should be fired. Now, my constituents, my members may say, why would he say that? Some cops need to be fired. Some cops have done some things that are just inappropriate and illegal, and they need to be held accountable. But for the most part, they are so few. We don't have Derek Chauvins in our state, in my humble opinion. But there's nothing wrong with making sure we have legislation to make sure that we don't get any Derek Chauvins.
No, it's definitely an interesting point. I mean, definitely having conversations and making some changes, to basically help with the community and basically even with police officers. But I think a lot of these things are training issues in general, because even a police officer going through training for 9 months in a police academy is not enough in regards to, and even though they do constant training,
sure,
things are always changing in general. And now with the camera system that's out there, I guess you could watch officers more of what they're doing. Yeah. And it's a different type of setting where years ago the cameras weren't in play.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And we supported a few sessions ago in the legislature the idea that we should start to require officers, in general, not everybody, but the officers who are dealing with the public and whatnot to wear body-worn cameras. There's nothing wrong with that because, number one, we have found statistically it ends up exonerating our officers more than doing anything bad to them. I mean, that's a good thing for us. But secondly, if there happens to be an approach that was taken that was not appropriate, it becomes something we can document, we can hold accountable, and we can train. Not everybody who does something wrong should be fired. I'm going to say it again, but sometimes that happens.
The what's interesting is, what are your thoughts? I mean, a lot of places, like, they talk about defunding the police, right? And then the other day it was on the TV, they were showing like someone that was homeless or in crisis. Instead of sending out a police officer to send out like a mobile response, like homeless mobile response or a crisis intervention, person that's not a police officer without a gun and so on. They were showing it in whatever city it was. What's your thoughts about sending someone out that's, I mean, they could be trained from
Sure.
Well, out here, it's a CIT, right? The Crisis Intervention Team officer who's been through training, even though he's a police officer. I think it's a very good training. I've been through it.
Absolutely.
I mean, what are your thoughts about having someone who's like a CIT, social worker that basically is going to go out to a call? I mean, I guess until people start dying. It's the same thing in New York City. There was auxiliary police officers that didn't have guns, but they were dressed like police officers.
Right.
Badges look similar to the average guy. They don't really know, in general. And they look very legit in New York, meaning they look almost like a police officer because there's different statuses like lieutenant, captain, deputy chief. There's different rankings. You would think that, especially if you're on drugs or have mental health issues, you're going to think that guy's a police officer. And they never wore a vest until 2 auxiliary cops died. Mm-hmm. Now all auxiliary police in New York City basically have to wear a bulletproof vest. But I guess my question is, by sending people out that are just like social workers for these calls, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, they can be trained, but they have no gun, right? They have no badge, they have no handcuffs.
Certainly there's a contingent of my members who would sit back and say, you're eventually going to have a cop there anyway, because there are going to be some situations where they just need to talk to somebody, and that's great. But what if it goes to hell in a handbasket, pardon the expression? Then you have a cop on the way, or you're supposed to have a cop sitting there just in the car, looking at his mobile computer while this other person is doing their job, and all of a sudden it goes to hell in a handbasket, and now the cop gets out of the car? How are we going to handle that? Officers are trained to be law enforcement. But that having been said, there was a bill this particular session in 2021 that is preparing in the future, because there's going to be an effort to have a national process by which people will not have to call 911 and get law enforcement involved. They can call another 3-digit number, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, and that will put them in touch with crisis intervention type situations so that the dispatchers won't immediately respond, as they are trained to do, to send a cop. They are perhaps more trained in these areas to be able to send people on a specific need-by-need basis for mental health issues. Is it somebody who is, the mother called and said, my son has mental health issues and he's drank too much and, he's making threats, or he's doing this, or he tore up the house and I don't need him arrested, I just need somebody to come talk to him. Well, again, he may start shooting when people get there. That's the problem with human instincts, is they go crazy on us. And cops are there to handle that, as you well know. But there is an attempt to get funding. There's a funding issue. A lot of this stuff is funding. It's one thing to say Metro's got a $500 million budget. They can afford it. Let's defund them, i.e. take money from the police department and give it to other social services. That's easier said than done. But it's almost impossible to do that in some of the other outlying areas throughout the state who don't have that kind of funding. So we call it an unfunded mandate. Sometimes when legislators put together bills, they have a financial aspect to them, a funding a mechanism to them that is almost, it can't be funded. It's a mandate, a requirement that they go out and do certain things, but they don't have the money to do it. And that sometimes can doom a bill to disaster, because the bill will not be successful in getting signed by the governor if there's too much money that could be presented and people have to do things. Not every agency is the same. Different agencies have different financial pocketbooks to be able to handle it. But aside from all that, you use the word defund the police, and if I may, for a moment, that is a nonsensical word. It's not meant that way by a lot of people. Some people think we should just defund the police, i.e. Abolish police. Yeah, well, good luck with that. But if you're talking about defunding the police, meaning taking some funds away from their buying whatever they buy to do their job and put it into social services for the homeless or for mental health or whatever, Joe Lombardo, the sheriff here in Las Vegas, has agreed that is not the worst thing in the world. He'd be willing to do it. Cops are not stupid. The departments are not stupid. They understand that there may be some shifting around to make these services available. But those who say defund the police and mean get rid of the police, I don't have any time for that. That's just nonsensical, and it won't be happening, I'm sure, in our lifetimes. At least it better not. And if it does, and we've seen efforts to do that in some portions of the country, yeah, well, look at the results. You need a cop more sometimes when you don't think you need a cop. Cops are going to be there. Cops need to be there. Cops take care of things. But if there's a way of getting it to someone else's hands, or a cop doesn't have to be the first responder to that process, my God, the cops will agree to that if we can do it right, because it doesn't place them into jeopardy. And plus, they got a lot of things to do. They can go on to other calls. I just haven't seen it work yet. None of us have seen it work yet to see if it's really going to work for our communities. But we're willing to take a look at it.
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking as we were talking, you know, being in a briefing, that if there was like 6 police officers and one person, which was like the crisis intervention, you know, mobile response team member, you know, that was a social service employee for, you know, for a police department, and then they would go out like on a shift, right? They would be like an unmarked car, and then maybe it's kind of interesting, maybe that the person would try to go first, and then the police officer would be nearby a block away just to see. I mean, hopefully the guy doesn't get killed, you know, during a mental health situation. But you probably need 2 people for safety wise, you know, or something like that. So the problem is, all comes back to money, right? Because now you're taking money from police officer salaries to basically have more of a social service. I just came up with a social service officer that basically will go out with no gun, no nothing. And he probably would need a second person, God forbid, right? They're going to probably want
certainly
to
there's going to be those opportunities or those needs, yeah.
Especially if it's at nighttime, just for safety issues, because maybe just the manpower, right, of 2 people, then you may, I don't know, females, you know, with their safety situation and I don't know. But I could see it being that way. But when I first came out here, you know, I guess 19 years ago, a lot of times they used to call, I think it was West Care at the time. So if I went somewhere and someone says, I'm thinking about hurting myself, we would say, dispatch, notify West Care, right? And West Care would come out and they would meet with them. Sure. One of the goals when dealing with people that are suicidal and so on, you always have to get them to admit that they want to basically hurt themselves or others in order for you to take them into custody, known as a legal 2000. For me personally, since I was a little bit of a talker, I was able to get people to talk to basically explain how they wanted to hurt themselves or kill themselves, because that was the only way that you could take them into custody, knowing that basically they have a problem. But most people are smart. If you see a police officer in uniform, you're not going to say, I want to kill myself or kill others. But
you're a talker? No, really?
Just a little bit. So the bottom line is, some officers, right, they say, oh, he's fine, let him go, you know. I kind of like the social services concept, but just the money from all these different departments, especially upstate. I mean, where there's 3 police officers, imagine if you have to man it with 1 social service officer, you know, basically per shift. I mean, the interesting thing is maybe they have more money now because people aren't becoming police officers, that basically you got to make more of a mental health officer, social service officer to basically go out and respond. I don't know how they would set up, but I mean, it all costs money. Well, I mean, all these things are great.
Funding is a big issue, but it's also a matter of manning, too. I mean, you've dealt with law enforcement groups in which minimum manning is part of your vernacular. Okay, well, what's the minimum manning for these social service people? You're going to have 1? Well, what if that person's tied up for the next couple of hours dealing with something? Now, all of a sudden, we have another call and another call. Well, then you're going to get cops show up. I mean, so
as a backup issue.
So you got to have people out. And
I mean, if it became so popular, then I guess you're going to start having all these.
Well, I guess, but that's, like I said, I'm all for it. I think most officers are all for it, but do it right. Don't do it as a knee-jerk reaction. Don't just throw money against the wall. Don't just go buy a bunch of people and say, okay, they're all properly trained, and then wait till somebody gets hurt. Cops don't want to do that.
Well, I liked actually before with CIT, which was, I think, was more of a metro program, then eventually Henderson officers went to the CIT program. They wanted to always have like 1 CIT officer per shift.
Yeah,
I kind of like that concept. I mean, maybe for Vegas, this whole CIT program, or, you know, have different people. I mean, recently I actually came up with something where, you know, the other day I've always been helping like with homeless people. And even when I was a community policing officer, I wanted to help homeless in different ways, and certain officers did different things. I was involved in like this homeless housing voucher program for homeless people, where you can put them in a motel, and then a case manager would come out and try to help them. Some officers didn't want to deal with it. People were afraid of disease and infection. Some people have gotten sick over the years. I think, you know, someone like his hand was got really sick and stuff like that, you know, and luckily he didn't die. So people are always afraid, especially now with COVID and everything going on. But I was actually thinking, most people do not know 211, which is the United Way number. Did you know about 211?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Most people do not know, you know, and basically, so there's 911, which is emergency. There's 311, which is non-emergency, right? And there's 211, which is from United Way, where most people don't know. There's signs and stuff out there, but basically it's for social services. So we can call 211 right now and say, hey, I have a problem. I need to go for counseling. I need to go for drug treatment. I need something, and they'll refer you to different places. But the other day, I called up and said, "Look, I see somebody outside, 2 blocks away. I know that they're homeless. They're begging for money. The police won't respond. Do you have anybody that will respond?" They said no. They would have to call 211.
Yeah.
So I was thinking to myself, the homeless guy on the corner begging for money that may have an addiction problem is not going to call 211. They're going to think you're crazy anyway by telling the guy, "Hey, call 211."
Yeah.
But I was thinking that you need some type of homeless mobile response. And basically and I actually on the problemsolver.vegas app, maybe we could show it, get your opinion on it if we could pull it up in a few minutes or whatever. But when you go to the app itself, it says like homeless. I probably have to change it to the homeless mobile response. And you click on the button and you can take a picture of somebody that's homeless if they're further away or a camping location nearby. And then basically it pinpoints the GPS address, right, where you're at.
Right. Maps
it out, and then you could describe who it is, and then you press submit, and then an email will go out, and there could be several different, whether it's Hope Link or these different nonprofits that are helping people that are homeless, and then an email would go out to like 4 or 5 people, and then there'd be like a mobile response. They could reply all and say, "Hey, I can head out there to go check out the situation," and then basically you can start. The pictures you got to be careful, right? Because you don't want to, you don't want to get hurt. But if you're in your car. So I basically set it up on the problemsolver.vegas app as a way of helping homeless people. Actually, if you look over here on the screen here, it says homeless. Probably has to change that, but what I want to do is make it like homeless mobile response. It uses your location, and then what you do is you put in the information. You could attach photos, and actually recently I went out with Freedom House. They go out on Saturdays, and you could fill it out, and then it maps the location where someone's homeless or there's a camp. So it's something I came up with. It hasn't started as of yet. We're going to be doing a news release, and basically people could use it. So you could fill it out. You could upload photos, and basically what I want to do is an email would go out to maybe 5, 6 nonprofits, and then they could reply also, "You know what, I'll head out there." So just something that I was trying to do to help people. You click on submit, and basically it's just a way of basically helping people because the number that 211 gave me to this program downtown, I've left 2, 3 messages. No one got back to me.
Really?
And I'm waiting for a phone call. And now maybe my message didn't say that. It says if you know of a homeless location or something like that, that to give the location, someone will get back to you.
And obviously this is developed around the idea that the community members will be looking out for their fellow individuals.
Yeah. So
because the homeless person is not going to get on the internet, obviously. And
correct. No. So if I'm with my kids, especially during COVID, right? You don't want to open your window. You don't want to give money and stuff like that, or you're afraid. I mean, you could basically go to the app, right, and basically fill out the information, press submit, and then at least you're doing something, right, to help somebody. Because otherwise, we just drive by and we feel bad. And basically, I wanted to create something to basically help people. At least with my kids, I could say, "Hey, take out the app, right? Let's describe the person, and then have kids basically be involved in it as well. I mean, you don't have to interact with somebody." And then, so today I spoke with 2 or 3 nonprofits. They wanted to be on the email system. It's just a way of kind of paying it forward. And then I can call 211 now with United Way and basically ask them if anyone wants to call and report homeless. They can go to the problemsolver.vegas app and basically upload the information, and then I'll go out to different, people. Because, if you call 311 the police, you say, I see a homeless guy in the corner. I'm sorry, we don't handle that. And no one handles those things, right? So I think the biggest thing is really just like, for me, it's not even such a big deal what I came up with. I mean, it's just an app that I have. It's information. Then more, the problem is every nonprofit is doing their own thing, but no one's like working together. Like they're not calling the other nonprofits, or a lot of people want to start their own nonprofit, but they're not, the other nonprofits are doing the same thing. Just work with the other nonprofits.
There's not very good coordination.
So it's the same thing with the crisis intervention. If you know somebody suffering from crisis intervention, there's different programs. It appears that the community and the people in our society want more social services, right? Because it looks bad that things are happening with cops. So
I don't have a quarrel with that.
Yeah.
Let's just do it right.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that in general for the future. What's your take right now on? So we talked about a little bit like police officers. I don't know the percentage. Someone told me it was really low. The recruitment. Did you hear specific numbers?
Yeah, I've seen some of the articles that have been written about it.
What are the percentages that think it's down?
They're low. I mean, some of these people or some of these organizations, depending upon where they are in the country, are suggesting they have 50% plus reduced recruitment numbers. Used to be thousands of people may apply for very few select positions in law enforcement years back. And then, of course, we went through the economic issues and things like that, where a lot of law enforcement departments were not hiring. Then all of a sudden they came out of that. Now they want to rehire. They want to send people to the academy, and they're getting people. But the quality of the people were now all of a sudden questionable. Background checks were not being necessarily passed by a lot of people. And now all of a sudden we're in a situation where people think, you know what, I don't know, it's bad enough that I got to go to work on and be spit upon. It's bad enough I have to go to work and maybe be shot or stabbed or somehow harmed or killed. Bad enough I don't know if I'm going to see my family when I leave. It's bad enough that I'm ridiculed on every law enforcement, or excuse me, every news media in the country. I want to do that. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to be one of these areas that don't pay well, we'll put that together. So yeah, it's natural. Now I was on a news channel here not too long ago, and they said the first question out of their mouths was, "Do you believe that law enforcement is going the other way? People who don't want to be, people are quitting, not just recruiting, but quitting." My answer was, and still is, there's two different schools of thought. There are some law enforcement, in my view, that come to work, do their stuff humbly. They do it well. They're well trained. They try to put that out of their heads, and they're good at putting it out of their heads in terms of the overall aura that people seem to have about them. There's others who are affected. There's others who are just tired of it. There's others who have been around long enough, and they're now looking for opportunities to retire maybe a little earlier than they had expected. And now you're getting your good officers, your seasoned people who are just going to say, screw it, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I didn't do anything wrong. I've had an unblemished career. I've been around for a long time. I was heading toward my PERS retirement. And my family is up my butt, shall we say, to get out. Get out, because you're going to do the right thing, and you're going to be told that it was for the wrong purpose. We're not going to be appreciated anymore. Well, cops sometimes are appreciated, sometimes they're not, and you know that, and you're willing to put up with that. But it has become intense enough that I'm absolutely convinced that the lower recruitment figures are largely accurate. I don't know whichever figure you may pull, but I'm sure there's some accuracy to the reduction in recruitment opportunities and people. And more and more people are leaving the current position. And it takes a few years for a cop to become solid and become proficient and become trained, and that's why they call them field training officers. You got to be doing your thing for a while before you become a training officer for another officer. They want to see that ability start to develop. Well, just like most professions, it takes some time to become good at what you do. Well, by the time you become good at what you do, now all of a sudden you're thinking about, I don't want to put up with this anymore. Then you are losing the best. You've recruited the best, hopefully. You're now going to lose the best for things you've done nothing wrong with. It wasn't you. Your department's not up your rear end. Society is. And you get tired of it. So there are people who handle that well, some people who are just tired of it, and I respect both ends. So I think there has been a major impact and will continue to be. Not because we should not be talking about the cases that we've seen around the country, not because we should not be sensitive to police change and things like that, reform, whatever you want to call it, but not just as a knee-jerk reaction to things, because that disrespects you. That disrespects the people who are out there protecting my family, and I'm not going to have that.
Now, most police officers that are basically working in this state, they normally have to work 20 years in order for them to retire or be at age 50 and so on. But recently I was told, I was talking with someone the other day, that basically things have changed for the police, that you now have to do 30 years.
There are some changes that have happened with PERS. I will admit that it's not an area. I'm not in PERS. I'm a private employee. I'm not a public employee. So I'm with this thing called Social Security. But
small program.
Small program. But aside from that, I will not pretend that I know the nuances of the PERS program. But there have been some changes, and a lot of people have been balking at that too, because they got in. Now, if they got in, usually they're grandfathered into the process, but new people who may have wanted to follow that step. And the whole purpose was, in a good PERS program, is we want to be able to have peace officers who are, not 69 years old running up and down trying to catch people. Give them an opportunity to do what they have to do for a long period of time, and give them a chance to walk away sooner than perhaps a lot of places. Now, there are detractors to that too. There are people out there that want to shut down a very, very viable and very successful PERS program because they don't like it. They think, well, the taxpayers fund it in some form or another. Yeah, well, so do you. PERS is not free. Part of your paycheck goes into PERS by state law. So you're contributing into it just like I contribute into Social Security or anything like that. For all I know, whatever you're doing, you're right now probably contributing into Social Security in some form or another, because you're not in PERS anymore, I guess. But when it's all said and done, the PERS program is a highly, well, it's not unique to the world, but it's certainly unique to public employees. It's one of the best funded in the system in the country, one of the top 10 funded ones. I know it's good, but it's kind of like, I know that BMW is great, but I've never driven it. Well, I know the PERS is great, but I'm not part of it. So I don't profess to know all the ins and outs of
Do you
it.
know that changed to all new people? Is
I think it was largely people hired after a certain date. Yeah,
Got it.
that's my understanding.
Which is a really big deal because most police officers want to get in, and I mean the little bit of the luxury is that you work for 20 years and you could retire.
Yes.
Out here, it's a little bit different. When I was in New York City, I got in when I was 22, and I could have retired at 42 with no age restriction. So when I started, I thought, hey, at 42, I'll be retired if I wanted to, if you want to work. But it's always nice to know that you could retire or 20 years and get out.
Sure.
Out here, basically, it's different. You had to be basically at age 50 and do at least 20 years with no penalty.
Right.
Which means even if you started at 20, you would actually have to work till at least, actually it's 25 years. So I have to work to 45 or something like that. So it's actually much older, you know. So it's kind of interesting just to work 30 years now if you start when you're 22. I mean, the truth of the matter is, even myself at 45 right now, to run down the street or to run after somebody, you're older. I mean, fine, yes, everyone can be in a little bit better shape, but as we know, some officers that were in the best shape in their lives then basically had strokes and heart attacks and died. So, I mean, but the bottom line is I think the older you get, it's a younger game, you know, in general, to basically be chasing after people and so on. You want younger people to be police officers, but you want them also to have experience. So it's kind of a mixture. But, you know, a person between the age of 25 and 35 and 40, right? Like it's a good age difference, but do you want a 60-year-old cop, you know, running around on the street? Or they're just not going to be as effective.
No, it's not going to be effective. And what's sadder, in my opinion, to the commentary, which is sadder than you may have some older officers, is you have a much younger crowd of people they're chasing. That says something about our society.
Much younger?
Younger. I mean, we're chasing kids with guns and whatnot that are barely teenagers and whatnot. Come on. Society has changed. Law enforcement. And that's why law enforcement needs to change too. That you want to call it reform, you want to call it reimagining policing, I don't care what you call it. Don't call it defund the police, please. But aside from that, I think that there's lots of ways that we should sit down and say, you know what, law enforcement has to keep up with the societal changes, not just with PERS, not just with paying people, taking care of officers, making sure they have the appropriate equipment, making sure they have the appropriate benefits, making sure that their insurance is good because they get hurt a lot. You ever been hurt as a peace officer? I think you have. It happens. It happens more than I would. I sit my butt in a chair most of the time or get in a car and drive around the state. I'm not subjected to that kind of stuff. I mean, I tell people all the time, they say, at your age, I'll be 66 shortly. At your age, why do you do this? Why do you get up in the middle of the night? Why do you do these hours? Why do you put all these hours in? And it's very simple. And it sounds trite. It sounds like I'm saying something to get a pat on the back. I'm not. I'm honored and privileged to represent peace officers because to me, they are heroes. Now, there are times when I have to walk out in the middle of the night and I look into a 25, 26-year-old peace officer's eyes, female, male, and they just had to do something I couldn't do. They had to protect a family, protect themselves, protect their fellow officers, protect children in a school bus, and they had to take the ultimate effort to do so. They had to discharge a firearm. They may have had to kill somebody. It's nice that they're going to be criticized and ridiculed in the newspaper by people. That's fine. But I look into their eyes and realize what they did was righteous, what they did was effective, what they did was what they were trained to do, what they did had to be done. I couldn't probably do it. That's the definition of a hero to me. I'll give up my hero worship here in the not too distant future, at least on a full-time basis. I'll still be doing things for NAPSO. But that's why I do it, because you guys are heroes. You haven't been in the practice of policing for some years. You're still a hero to mine. That's why I'm here. That's why when you ask me to come on here, I come on here, because you're still that guy I remember in uniform.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I really appreciate everything that you've done over the years. You know, the bottom line is that to have somebody by your side, you know, when you're a police officer, and look, everyone in life, you know, no one's perfect. We all make mistakes in life. I'm not perfect either, and I always tell that to people as well. That the bottom line is it's nice to have representation. And, you know, I'm 45 now. When I started as a police officer in New York City at the age of 22, the biggest thing with NYPD was that it was always the thing that you always had a union delegate and you also had an attorney. And it wasn't because you did something wrong, it was just because people make allegations and there wasn't cameras at the time. And basically people, you know, you want representation to someone to fight for you because, you know, being in a corner and basically looking like the bad guy when you're a police officer and you're wearing that badge with pride, basically, you know, you want someone to be there to protect you. So I've had internal affairs in New York City where, you know, I wasn't even on scene at a location. I was actually at a police officer's funeral, and for some reason they messed up, and, you know, my sector car was basically shown to be there, but it was a task force that took over while I was at a funeral. And when I went there, there was a family that was there. They said I did all these things, and I was like, I don't remember any of this. And I didn't have my memo book, which in New York City officers have memo books. And I realized that day when I went back that I was at a funeral. It wasn't even me. I wasn't even there. I'm like, I have no clue what's going on. Right. So especially like sometimes there's allegations, you have no clue. They said that I was there. I said, I don't remember any of this whatsoever. I thought they thought I was crazy, but I really was at a funeral later on, when I looked at the memo book entry. But the bottom line is it's nice to have representation. It's nice to have a delegate or union representation. When I came out here 19 years ago, I think that they, at least in Henderson, they would open up yellow pages to look for a lawyer. There was no representation until I happened to find people mentioned this guy, Rick McCann. You should get with him because I was trying to do union benefits as a benefits administrator and basically getting more involved in the union, because it was a very big thing in New York City is to basically always have union representation and to have an association and so on. And I'm glad over the last 19 years, at least with Henderson, a lot of things I learned in New York City, that I was able to help the union, and also basically with NAPSO being around, because I take great pride knowing that it exists for all these years and helping officers, because I was involved in it back then. So
I should blame you for doing all this? Okay.
For any of the extra gray hair.
Thank you so much.
Any lost hair too.
Exactly.
But the bottom line is that I'm really proud that you've done this for all these years, because like I said, we've known each other for a long time. You've actually, sometimes I have some crazy ideas and some people go with it, right? And actually you took the COPS, California Organization of Police and Sheriffs, and you made it into NAPSO, and you made it your own, and you've helped a lot of police officers and a lot of families. And I think that you don't even realize that police officers that you helped, at one of maybe their worst of times in their life, whether any type of allegation, that basically you don't really see sometimes what happens in their home. Mm-hmm. And by you being by their side as someone that's protecting them and their rights, or being a friend, I think that you've helped a lot of people over time, whether they've never told you or they appreciate it, by you being by their side during a time where, like I said, an allegation or a negative time in their life. We've had people, as you know, officers where family members have died, they passed away, they've drank alcohol, just like most police officers, right? We're normal people, right? You dress up in uniform, but you're still a normal person, after the clock hits, right? So if a member dies of your family, you wind up drinking alcohol, you wind up taking a prescription pill because you're upset, and you wind up getting in the car. It doesn't make you a bad guy. I mean, it makes you basically a person that's human and then basically made a mistake. But you've really been there for tons of officers, I'm sure, whether it's internal affairs or collective bargaining, helping other people. And you really, I commend you for all the stuff that you've done. I know we'll go out for dinner to after this podcast, just to kind of celebrate all the years basically that you've helped other officers. And basically, again, I'm sure tons of police officers will see, this video will be on the NAPSO website as well, to basically your legacy of basically what you've done in general. And I hope the new guy basically can fill your shoes, half your shoes, half your pants, your shirt too. You make sure that he dresses like you too. Yeah. But the bottom line is, it's a very difficult job, and you've done an amazing job over the years, and you've helped me and my family over the years as well, just being a dear friend and someone to listen to. And I know you've meet officers at 3 a.m. and 5 a.m, and you accept text messages. So again, I commend you for everything that you basically have done. And I think it's going to be hard for a new person to take over your shoes, even though they can do it. You've just been doing it for so long, and you're so knowledgeable with it. So, but I'm glad you're still going to be involved in doing some lobbyists and other stuff.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so we're coming to the end of the Problem Solver show, and maybe we'll have you in the back. I was actually thinking that maybe when you retire, I can have you come back as a co-host a little bit, and some different topics. Maybe we'll have. I wanted like to invite Sheriff Joe Lombardo basically on the show, or some other chief of police, and you could be as well discussing and asking some questions, which I think would be a good time actually after you retire.
I wouldn't be on the other side of them for a change.
It'd be interesting just to have like a group discussion about policing and changes and what could be done and stuff like that, in general. So again, I really appreciate your time. I think we covered a lot of the aspects, the mission. We showed your video in general, basically what you guys are doing, how you're helping people collect the bargaining, grievances, policing today. Hopefully things will change where we'll get more police officers on the streets, because we do need them. Absolutely. And it's a thankless job, but someone's got to do it. And I pray for all the safety for any of the officers across the United States, especially during this crazy time that's taking place. Again, I'm David Kohlmeyer. I am the problem solver. And basically every single week we have great people like Rick McCann, who's the executive director for NAPSO, basically on the show, helping people in many, many different ways. If you need help whatsoever for anything that I could basically do, the progressive web app, which is theproblemsolver.vegas, you can go online. It's a website, add it to your home screen. There's different resources, jobs, employment, housing. You're looking to buy a home, mortgages, if you're about to lose your home. We also have a network of lawyers called Las Vegas Legal Network. that basically is a network of lawyers that are basically helping people in different ways, whether it's for free, pro bono, or discounted fees as well, to basically help people, especially during these economic times. So whatever I could do to basically help, again, my number is 702-400-7474. Again, 702-400-7474. Again, I'm David Kohlmeyer, the problem solver. I'll see you next week. Be safe and be careful out there.